And earlier today, I spoke to a California representative, Ro Khanna, about the shooting in his district. He's the congressman who represents that area. Here's what he had to say. Congressman, first of all, thanks for being here. This has to be heart-wrenching for you to watch. How do you feel right now hearing about what happened there and seeing how law enforcement is handling this?
It's just sickening, heartbreaking. There's a sense of outrage, a sense of loss for our community. I mean, to have 8 victims, families' lives destroyed, there's just a lot of hurt. Obviously, I'm deeply grateful to the law enforcement for how they've responded, to the first responders, for the doctors and nurses, for Glenn Hendricks and Mayor Liccardo. Glenn, who's the head of the VTA, and I've reached out to them. But there's an enormous amount of hurt right now in our community.
And Congressman, we heard also from the mayor of San Jose calling this a dark moment and talking about how this, despite the fact that in this case the shooter is dead and no longer poses a threat to the community, he says this in general is not an isolated incident.
Well, it isn't. I mean, here you have a case of VTA employees who are public servants. They go to work to help the public transport run in Silicon Valley. We're all dependent on them. They don't make a lot of money. They show up, and no one would think that just going to work, their lives would be at risk. And our community will never be the same. Those families are never going to get their loved ones back. And what is outrageous is you have these incidents happening every day in this country where you have mass shootings, you have people going in with guns who shouldn't be having these weapons, and in a few seconds, they're ruining families' lives, they're ruining communities, and at some point, we have to ask, when are we going to deal with this? I mean, it's happening today to my community. It could happen tomorrow to any other community. And I've said I've been in Congress for 5 years. We have not, in my 5 years in Congress, had a single bill that the president has signed on gun violence. That's a source of shame to me, and it should be a source of shame to everyone who serves in the Congress that we have not been able to deliver for the American public.
So, Congressman, what are some specific measures that you think could be put in place to prevent shootings like this from happening again?
The very common sense measure is a universal background check. There is no reason someone like this suspect should have had a gun that could fire in the way it did and takes in seconds many lives. And we have passed in the House a universal background check. It should pass the Senate. It has over 80% support. It does nothing to go after people who are law-abiding gun holders. But what it says is if you have something which is a criminal background or if you are going to be likely to commit a mass crime, you shouldn't have a weapon like this. And I really think that has to be the first step.
And we're reading the tweet. We have the tweet up on screen now that you sent out earlier today saying, "My heart is with everyone at the VTA and the families of the victims of this horrific tragedy. I'm currently working with the San Jose Police Department and Mayor's office to get the facts, and we'll share more soon." And Congressman, I heard you talking about the fact that the suspect, you say, shouldn't have been able to have a weapon like this. Do you know what kind of weapon he was carrying?
I do not. I do not. What we do know from our conversations is that he was able to fire very quickly and take a lot of life very quickly. And so we have to figure out what that weapon was. And then we have to ask, why is it that someone like him had access to the weapon? The other thing that would help is red flag laws. If someone has a concern that an individual could be a threat to a family, to a community, they should be able to go to court and have a court order so that a gun is temporarily taken away from the person who is going to cause this kind of harm. There are some very basic common sense things we can do in this country that 80–90% of people support. Every time we have one of these incidents, people talk about it and then somehow nothing happens. And, you know, I'm going to have to look those families in the face and somehow try to console them and console people at the VTA. And it's just such a tragedy that we aren't able to have basic laws to keep Americans safe in this country.
And you mentioned these VTA employees. These are people who kept the transportation system running even during the pandemic when barely anyone was using it. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration where they were celebrating an uptick in riders as cases of COVID go down, and instead now they're marking this day as a tragedy.
You're absolutely right. I appreciate your noting that. I mean, the VTA employees are the ones who keep the infrastructure running of Silicon Valley. You know, when people think of my district, they think of Apple and Google. They don't think of all of the public servants who make it possible for the region to run. If we didn't have VTA, Silicon Valley would come to a halt. And they go into work every day. They did extraordinary work during COVID where ridership was down, and they still kept the public transport running. They overcame revenue problems. And my heart breaks for them. I mean, all of these employees who now have lost someone who they know lost someone part of the VTA family and are traumatized in terms of violence at their workplace. I remember how the trauma of having someone, the Capitol invaded, and there was the loss of life, but not the level of loss of life here. So imagine what people who are at the VTA who know that 8 people were killed are going to feel for the rest of their lives.
And Congressman, we're now hearing from the White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre addressing this shooting in a press briefing just moments ago. I want to play for you a clip of that moment.
So the White House is monitoring the situation, and our hearts go out to the victims and their families. I know local officials have addressed this publicly, and there is an ongoing investigation, as we all know. We will continue to stay in close contact with them and offer any assistance as needed. We still don't know all of the details, but what's clear, as the president has said, is that we are suffering from an epidemic of gun violence in this country, both in mass shootings and in the lives that are being taken in daily gun violence that doesn't make national headlines. That's why he has already taken an initial set of actions on gun violence that will save lives. And that's why he's calling on Congress to take action, including calling on the Senate to pass the 3 bills to strengthen background checks that have already cleared the House with bipartisan support and which have the overwhelming backing of the American people.
So, Congressman, again, that was the first statement from the White House that we've heard in relation to this shooting. What is it like to be in a position of leadership when this happens in your community?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the president's statement, and I think he has the empathy and the experience and the ability to connect with the broad range of the American public to hopefully get something through. And he served in the Senate many years, and I hope he will be able to finally break the logjam and get this through the Senate and get something done. You feel partly helpless because what can you say to families who suffered this kind of loss? What can you do really in a situation like this to make people feel better? So even though you're in Congress, there's a sense of helplessness. There's a sense of anger. Obviously, anyone who represents a community in Congress is passionate about the community, loves the community. And when this happens and it affects a community so deeply, you're really angry at why it happened. And then you think, what can you do? And there is a sense of responsibility. Yes, we passed this in the House of Representatives, but no one cares about all the details of who passed what. What they know, what the young people know in my district is nothing gets done, that you're in Congress and our generation hasn't been able to deliver on such a basic issue. And so you feel a sense of real responsibility of, in my time in Congress, are we actually going to be able to make progress on this issue?
All right, Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents the San Jose area. Congressman, we feel for you and your community right now, and we're watching this closely. Thank you for taking the time to be on with us today.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.